Hello. G'day. My name's Nick. I'm the head of the platform team at Style Education. As I was saying before, we make the best science lessons, and the platform that teachers can use that and empower them to teach amazing science lessons. And I'm going to be talking about my experience writing Ruby gems in Rust. And I want to give you the tools to perhaps dig into that a bit more, and also just give my sort of experience report from that. But I want to start by setting the scene. And so here are the characters. We have Ruby, the language that we're here for, and it's also the main programming language at Style. It's what we write most of our backend in, but we'll see we can't say all of our backend anymore. We got gems, which are just Ruby libraries. Native extensions are like a Ruby gem, so like a library or part of a library that's written in a compiled language. Then you have Bundler, which is just the dependency manager. It can also build these native extensions and stuff, which is super useful. And Rust is a compiled programming language with a really great type system. BSON or binary JSON is the serialization format that MongoDB uses. And the last one is Penguin, which is the gem that I wrote in Rust. And I'll touch on that name in a second. So, why? Two reasons. First is that we semi-recently completed a migration moving off MongoDB. You can save your applause on that for the end. And as part of that, we had the BSON gem in our app, but now all it was doing was generating IDs. We've got this BSON object ID, but we don't use the BSON serialization format anywhere in our code base. And having a serialization library like that just to generate some IDs kind of seemed like a lot. And so I was looking for an alternative. But the ID generation in the BSON gem is written in C, and it's quite tightly coupled to the rest of the gem, so we couldn't just pull it out. And so the name Penguin is a reference to the publishing company, where he was just looking for a good book to read. I was just looking for a good ID generator, not a whole serialization library. Secondly, at Style, over the next 2 years, we're looking to scale from currently about 500,000 students to 5 or 6 million students. So there's going to be some performance concerns there. And one thing we're looking at is the possibility of using Rust for the really performance-critical parts of our app. So I wanted to gain some experience beyond, we just currently use it for internal tooling. So what does it look like pulling it into our main app? So everything that I'm going to talk about today basically led to this change in the Style code base itself. The goal was to keep the API of Penguin versus the BSON object ID stuff really similar. So the actual time to test it out was small and really easy. And the Ruby tooling supports native extensions, and including Rust, to a high enough degree that really so I wrote Penguin and then I dropped it in as a dependency, made essentially this change, and it worked, which was pretty awesome. So that was with the help of stock tooling like Bundler, which supports generating Rust-based native extensions just with that command that I've got up there, so you can get up and running really easily. And that includes pulling in the rate compiler gem, which just makes it really simple to compile native extensions. You're not having to write your own make files or anything like that, or copy around the shared libraries that are being pulled in. And to the extent of we didn't even have to publish this library anywhere. It's just an open source repo on GitHub, and you can just point Bundler at that rather than having to publish to Ruby gems or your own internal registry or something like that. And then on the Rust side, the Magnus crate. And so if you're not familiar with crates, they're the equivalent of gems in the Rust ecosystem. But so the Rust crate makes it really easy to have that Ruby Rust interop layer. It does all the conversions of like Rust types. So you've got like a Rust string. It'll convert that to a Ruby string for you. There are like some performance concerns with that, but it makes it really easy to get up and running. So this is what the code to like wire everything up basically looks like. You've got C in the bottom there as an equivalent of the Rust code that I had to write up the top. And they look very similar to the extent of they're essentially the same, like they're basically the same number of lines. But Magnus is providing us a lot here. So things like panics, which are the equivalent of exceptions in Ruby, will automatically get caught and bubbled up as exceptions in Ruby, so it's not going to crash your app, whereas you're not going to get something like that from C. And it also provides that automatic conversion from Rust types to Ruby types that I mentioned. Yeah. When I was rolling this out, I really didn't want to introduce a performance regression. So I did a bunch of benchmarking. This was really simple because it's just generating some IDs. So this is iterations per second. Basically, how many IDs can each of these generate per second? And these were the results of that. And it's my opportunity to brag that Penguin was 4 times faster. Like, to be fair, my gem does one thing versus an entire serialization library, but we can ignore that bit. So don't need to dig into look into exactly what is up here, but what I wanted to show is on the Rust side to dig into the performance there, they have some really great tooling too. And this is from a tool called Criterion, where it provides the tools not just for benchmarking this time, but also an analysis of where the time is going. And importantly, comparing between previous runs. So you can use this for things like checking in your baseline and then making sure that new code in CI doesn't introduce performance regressions. To zooming in on this bit here, where it actually tells you was there a statistically significant performance improvement? Then it's up to you to decide whether, sure, you've got an improvement, but is it worth the complexity that it introduced? So for one example of something that I played around with was how do we actually store the ID in memory as a Rust structure? I played around with a few different structures of that. Some of those were more performant, but way more complex. So I decided to back those out because we already had some really good, better performance than the existing gem there. So there weren't any regressions. The other thing that Criterion gives us is this thing called a flame graph that makes it really easy to find areas for improvement. And this was how I found one of the optimizations, which was getting the time was taking a lot of time. And so reading flame graphs initially can seem quite confusing. The important part here is that none of these axes are time. What we're looking at is basically the larger the rectangle as in width, the longer it's on the stack. And when it's at the top, that means that it's being executed by the CPU. So basically look for things that are at the top for a long time. Another tool that can give you these things is Xcode Instruments. If you're a Mac user, it provides a few other things, but a colleague introduced me to that, and that was super useful. But to zoom in on part of the flame graph here, we can see okay, so we've got this host notification. That's basically just waiting for a syscall to get the time. So we spend some time there. But then also there's a bunch of time actually just parsing that out into a structured time type to use in Rust. But the ID that we're generating, we just care about the integer. So we could do away, that's something that we could do away with as an optimization. So the main gotchas with writing these gems in Rust is that translation layer is really like the most expensive part. And it's not just the foreign function interface or the FFI. Like, it's not the same cost that you would pay with C, because with crates like Magnus, it's just like it's providing a lot for you. And so there's a bit of a cost to pay there with that, like type conversion and things like that. So an optimization is to try to like reduce the amount of those conversions that you're having to do, or minimize the number of times that you're having to go in between the two. So if you're like, okay, we've got this really hot loop, let's write the inside of it in Rust. Maybe actually what you want to do is move the whole loop into Rust, so you pay that cost going across and back once. Or similarly, like batching it. So instead of like computing the value just of like a single element, like chuck an array in and do it all there. The other thing is that if you're not familiar with the GVL, which is the global VM lock, or you might know it as the GIL, basically that means that one line of Ruby code like executes at a time. And a common thing in native extensions is to release that so that other parts of your Ruby app can go off and do that while for example, it's talking to the database. And so Magnus, the crate that I was using, doesn't give you an easy way of doing that at the moment. Like, it's something that they're aware of. And for what I was doing, it just wasn't a big deal, because like generating that ID is super quick. But if you were like moving large parts of the code base to Rust, that could be quite important. Overall takeaways were that the performance was good. As I said, generating an ID was 4 times faster, which I was pretty stoked about. But we do have to watch out for that performance of going back and forth between Ruby and Rust. For us, it's definitely going to be a tool in the toolbox. Like, it's not the only thing to reach for, but it's definitely something. And overall, it was a pretty great experience. The time from having this idea to being able to have it in production was like a few days. So if this is like the sort of work that's interesting to you, that's the kind of thing that we're doing on the platform team to try to scale style to 5 or 6 million users. And also you're excited about the idea of supporting teachers to teach students really engaging and exciting science lessons in Australia and in the US. That QR code there goes to hiring page, our hiring page rather. And I've also got a bunch of resources that I found really helpful and a link to the gem that I wrote. Thank you.
For everyone who couldn't see that, I falconed the ball. My question was around, so on deployment or installation, or however you're constructing it, you're building the native extension. How does that, for such a small thing, I wouldn't expect it to take a long time, but is that noticeable or?
For like building of the gem, it wasn't particularly noticeable, because we also have like some like compilation of like other native gems that we're not using, like a few, I don't know off the top of my head, but yeah. And then that's sort of all like baked into the Docker image that then gets deployed. Definitely for like our internal Rust tooling, the compilation time has been a pain point. And so we're looking at things like, there's great tools like SC Cache that will like cache compilation artifacts between builds in CI that will hopefully like cut down on compilation times.
Just silly question. Why have you picked Rust instead of like Go or Camel or other kind of easier to tackle?
So at like we've had a bit of like quite a bit of investment in Rust already for our internal tooling, so there's a lot of experience there, particularly for like interop with Ruby. Like something like Go, I think would be really challenging because they've both got a garbage collector, whereas Rust doesn't have one. So like writing a native extension more lends itself to languages like C or C++ or Rust that don't have that runtime that comes along with it. Yeah.
Thank you. And what's the minimum IQ should I have to apply?
Hey?
I know that a lot of people in Style very,
Oh,
very
you do?
gifted engineers. Yeah, I'm just wondering what's the minimum IQ.
Could you give us an example of something you'd use the Rust extension or you would write about Rust extension for?
Like in our app. So yeah, so for example, so Star was a big Ruby code base, but it's not written in Rails. We actually define the interface using like protobuf files, and then that has a JSON representation that gets passed. And some of that includes like the generation of Ruby objects, so you can operate on those in the code base, like type-safe objects, rather than like just sort of like hashes or something like that. And so some of that code, like quite a bit of that code, is written in Ruby, and so that's an area that we're looking at. Like it's quite CPU expensive, so would be like a good like place to use a native extension.
It's like serialization, like converting things from one thing to the other, and that.
Yes, yeah, so yeah. There's like it's like a little bit like I think it's not as cut and dry as like. This example was like quite easy, but the sort of like construction of objects that we then work with in Ruby, I think is like quite challenging, but that's an idea that we're toying around with.
Ooh. Hang on. Brendan says, how much of a performance difference is it from implementing the ID generation yourself in pure Ruby?
I think that's a really interesting one. I didn't try that because I wanted to see like this is a capability we wanted to explore, like putting Rust in the app. I think it would be really interesting with sort of things like YJIT. We're definitely seeing like Ruby code seems to have can have like even better execution time than like native extensions. So that would be a really cool thing to do.
Or maybe he was just rusty.
You are all puns today.
Got some drugs going on.
Thank you so much, Nick.
Thank you.